I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, whatever.
Yes.
But I do think that your vaginal wall is just as absorbent as your intestines or your mouth or whatever.
Down the line, if it's something you really want to talk to someone about, we one of the girls that works for us is a gynecological teaching associate at Baylor, and she teaches the medical students how to do vaginal exams. But she is the chick that's all about like diva cups and why you shouldn't use tampons and what you can use naturally. And so you might want to. And she is a certified clinical sexologist.
Clinical sexologist.
Who?
Her name's Shirley Jefferson.
Okay.
She has a doctorate in human sexuality.
What?
Yes, she's
I want to talk to her.
You have to come. We do a class called Vias for Vagina. You will learn so fucking much.
Yes.
You have to come.
Okay.
We'll throw it again, and you will come.
Yes.
Okay. It is insane. We had midwives and physicians in there, and she gave a quiz, and we had to label it all, and nobody got it right.
Whoa. Well, it makes sense. I mean, they don't even know. They don't even know if what's. I'm gonna say it. What squirting is.
No.
I mean, and where it comes, and if there's this gland or whatever.
All of that.
Yeah.
She talked about, and she is. You don't even understand. She is an adjunct professor at the farm. Do you know what the farm is? The midwife Ina Mae Gaskin owns at the commune in Tennessee.
Okay.
She goes and teaches there.
Okay. So she's here in Dallas?
Yeah, she works for me.
One of us.
What?
Yeah.
Did you interview local midwives and doulas?
No.
Okay.
I know. I mean, these are my friends.
Say,
yes,
who did you
local.
interview?
These are my friends. Some of my friends. I did. So I had my second baby in San Antonio at San Antonio Birthing Center, and then my first baby was. I actually ended up at the hospital, but I went to Allen Birthing Center.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
With Kathleen or?
No, it was Becky. This was 10 years ago.
Oh, so it was
ago.
before.
It was Becky, I think, and then another girl named Amy. It was her
Amy
first. Yes, it was her.
Yeah.
I was her first by herself, I think.
Really?
Yeah,
oh
and
my
that's
God. And she's like the midwife around here now.
Is she?
Yes.
Well, what happened was, I think that was why I bullied her. Because it was her first, or one of her first, and I bullied her into taking, I was like, no, we're going to the hospital. It was like 22, it was long and whatever. And it was my first, and I was not dilating and all this stuff. And she goes, no, but you don't want to go. I'm like, yes, I do.
So you went?
Yeah, but luckily, so it was perfect. I mean, not perfect in the way I wanted it, but I went up to McKinney. And, on the way, she called and she said, there's a midwife up there. Do you want the midwife? I'm like, yeah. And so we go up there. I got a walking epidural. I told the guy, just take the edge off. I still want to feel it. And he was awesome. I just remember just this African anesthesiologist. I don't know, like, I love you. Yeah.
You're my person.
And you know exactly what I want, and it was great. And then, so when Amy walked in, the midwife was her teacher, like her midwife teacher, and they are all hugging and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, yay! I was so excited.
This is the best thing ever.
Yes, it was. It really worked out. I mean, for me, the way it happened, it was.
And then
great.
you had your other one in San Antonio at a birth center.
Yeah,
So it's Did you demand to go to the hospital that time?
No, because I told him, this was 6 years later.
You were like,
I told him
what happened.
I go, I need your strongest midwife that's gonna not let me.
I need a dominant.
I'm not gonna roll right over.
And so they gave me. I think she was bisexual. They gave me a bisexual woman who was about 50 who had 5 10-pound kids. Like all natural and everything. I'm like, yes, I want her.
Yes.
yes.
Well, we are firm believers in that there are like so many different personality types, and like you need that kind of doula or that kind of midwife based on your personality, or else you will
cave or not have a good experience.
Right.
Yeah, we are. So I totally get it. But
anyway. No, I mean I loved Amy. I just think it was just it was my first baby, and I'm pretty tough and I was demanding, and I'm like, it's time. I remember whenever whenever me grunting down, going open like a flower,
Gosh.
didn't work.
Yes. You were like, this is not working for me. Yeah,
Like,
I totally get
I
it.
have to have you stick your fingers up my twat while I am having another contraction,
I will
or
kill
whatever.
you. I will stab you in
Yeah.
your face. But yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think whenever I said this, I can't do this anymore, blah, 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 I was going into the heart or the transition or whatever.
Of course.
And
Everybody can't do it at that point. You're not alone.
But you don't know
But
that.
I was
your first
on the
time.
way to McKinney from
Yes.
Allen, I'm
Yes.
like, nope.
When you're in the car and you, like, every single bump and movement, you feel like you're going to push out a person, you know you're headed to the hospital at the right time.
That's right.
Because if someone's going to the hospital and they're texting and Facebooking and chatting with me on the phone, I'm like, turn around, go home. Like, it is too soon. You do not need to be going yet. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, good. I'm glad it all worked out for you.
Yes. Okay, so you want to talk about the importance of sex during pregnancy.
Well, I think I want to talk about like the importance of like the oxytocin hormone and like how it like kind of what gets you into this can get you out by, utilizing the hormones that are already in your body to kind of allow you to get used to them, dilate, contract, etc. prior to actual labor, that it's beneficial. And of course, like sex as well, because anytime that you're having an orgasm, like you are relaxing and releasing your pelvic floor. When you have an orgasm, a good orgasm for 8 seconds, your pelvic floor is contracting, for 3 to 5 contractions a lot of times. For a super good orgasm, like a big one, it's like 10 to 15 contractions, as far as pelvic floor contractions. So, we oftentimes have women who are super opposed to masturbation, clitoral stimulation, sex even. I mean, I have so many clients who will be talking about this and they'll be like, I haven't had sex for my whole pregnancy. And I'm just like, oh, sister! Like,
that's the first thing. Let's address that first.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I don't know where it came from or whatever, or why even. I think some guys are freaked out about it too.
Well, let me just tell you that if some guy's penis can actually poke their baby in the head, that is an impressive penis. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Like, I mean, our bodies are made to protect our babies, and there's no way that that's going to happen. Now, of course, if somebody's water is broken, we don't want them having sex. I mean, that's just because of bacteria. Yeah, like, anytime that protective coating is gone, like, you're inviting bacteria into the space. But other than that, like, I mean, that is one of the best times to have sex. You have increased blood flow. I mean, you don't have to suck in your belly. You look good. You look the same no matter what.
You shouldn't ever have to suck in your belly.
Well,
that's part of our beauty.
We sure don't have to feel self-conscious, I should say.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you are who you are. Like, you are... you're growing a person, like, it's like, should be one of the best times in your life. And, becoming extra connected to your partner, like, leading up to delivery is also a key ingredient to, like, allowing for things to unfold, for your body to be able to surrender to these hormones and to the process. I mean, if you're not feeling that connection, I mean, that increases your chances of having a longer, harder labor, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. Also, throughout the pregnancy, anytime you can put, the good chemicals, oxytocin, just feel good. That allows for healing. That allows for you to be, maybe have a better pregnancy.
Absolutely.
Even because you're happy and you're not as stressed. And you do have the increased blood flow, so your orgasms can be insane.
Absolutely. But people are just so fearful of, am I going to hurt the baby, etc. But I mean those hormones, those good hormones, I mean, are actually good for your pregnancy.
Right.
So why would you not want that? If we look at studies on people who have, like, super stressful pregnancies, like for instance, with my first, I have 5 children. With my first 2 children, I was in an abusive relationship, super stressful pregnancies, early births, like trauma all around, through these pregnancies. Whereas with my last 3, it was not the case. So, I mean, you definitely can see a difference in kind of how your body responds to those different neuropeptides.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah, I mean, I think it's super important.
Okay, so it's good for just feeling good, and also I know some people who take antidepressants and stuff, and they shouldn't during anyway, my opinion is they should never take them anyway, but definitely not during pregnancy. Maybe that's one way to help encourage.
Well, I mean, it's definitely feel-good hormones. I mean, you think of oxytocin and endorphins, but, like the primary function of oxytocin, like we think of the 2 primary functions for women is orgasm, and then, of course, contractions. So it's very interesting that something that causes you so much pleasure in one hand can cause you so much pain in the other. It's interesting, and it makes you wonder if it has anything to do with perception. Because when we have an orgasm as women, we know that a lot of that is about mind-body connection. For a man, he's not thinking about like all these other things in his mind when he's about to have an orgasm. That doesn't come into place for him. Like, it's going to happen. It's very tunnel vision or instant gratification. For a woman, if we have a ton of like stresses and worries, this bill needs to be paid, my mom's about to be here, I'm going to be late, all these things, then it will turn us off. It'll turn our body off because of what our mind is doing.
Right. It's not allowing you to be in the moment. And you have to be in the moment to have an orgasm.
Well, we know that we have to surrender to that. So we have to allow for our mind to be in a place where it can just hush. Right? So, the idea of like oxytocin building is that it kind of helps to turn off. So foreplay, for instance, helps to turn off that part of the brain that is in charge of fight or flight.
Okay.
So that is what gives us fear and anxiety and worry and stress, right? So oxytocin, in a way, snuffs that out.
Okay.
Right? So it allows us to have an orgasm. And that's why some women cannot reach that, because they're too in their head.
Okay.
So we have to think about that in comparison to pregnancy and childbirth. I mean, because that is like the biggest mind-body connection that we will ever experience. Like, it just true. Truly is. Like, and, the cool thing is like, you will never have as much oxytocin running through your body as you do when you give birth right before the placenta is born. That's the most oxytocin in our body will ever have.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's really cool. And so, I mean, it's just such an amazing hormone that we carry, that we make. It's amazing. And in a sense, we're choosing not to use it up until. Like, does that make sense? Like, and that's what is hard for me to understand. Like, I feel like...
Well, you need to practice. I mean, you've got to practice. You can't just wait for the big game.
Yeah.
For it to happen. You've got to allow and practice.
When we talk to our moms, we, like I told you earlier, we serve 400 to 500 moms a year who are planning for normal, natural, uneventful vaginal deliveries. Some of them are choosing home birth centers, some hospital, whatever, but the 9 out of 10 of them want to do this as drug-free and as naturally as possible. So if that's true, then why are we not using what we're naturally given? What helped get this baby in can help get this baby out, right? So we oftentimes tell our clients that early labor is the foreplay to birth.
Okay.
So...
I guess if you look at it that way.
Well, I mean, we try to talk to them instead of, you remember, like, do you remember when you were in labor, did anyone tell you, like, get out and start walking and doing all these things, like, rev it up and get it going? we actually say the opposite to our moms. We're like, get naked, get in your bed with your man or your wife and make out. Like, you know, just have some cuddle time, make out, have an orgasm. You don't have to, even if their water's broken, you don't have to have penetration sex. Like, you can do digital clitoral stimulation. You can use a vibrator, whatever you need to do. You are going to get such a good release of oxytocin that it will not only make your labor start happening more quickly and effectively and efficiently, but it'll also be so much more comfortable.
So it's like a natural, it's almost like a natural, what is it that they give you that starts with a P?
Pitocin.
It's like a natural Pitocin and an
You're
epidural.
exactly right. So Pitocin is the synthetic form of oxytocin. The only difference is that Pitocin does not cross the blood-brain barrier like oxytocin does.
Ooh,
so
that's good.
Oxytocin, you know, when you are fueling that, is giving you like feelings of protection. That's why moms are so like mama bear. It's giving you like feelings of bonding. Mm-hmm. You know, there's all kinds of things that are running through with oxytocin that aren't with Pitocin. Does that make sense?
Right.
So
because it's synthetic.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's a time and a place, like, you know, if something emergent is happening, but 9 times out of 10 again, we can rely on our own body and our natural hormones to drive this car. Birth flies on autopilot. You know, we maybe chose a hospital or a physician, you know, but that's essentially like we're flying to Europe and we have a pilot in the plane, you know, that gets paid the big bucks to get us there. But I bet you when we're over the ocean, we're on autopilot. That's how birth should go. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we hit turbulence or need to land, we want the pilot to know how to fly the plane. But the large majority of the time, it's on autopilot because we have hormones that fuel it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
we don't really need...
We don't need interference.
And interference and intervention often causes exactly what we don't want.
Right.
Right? So, I am such a believer in, you know, in an orgasm, at least an orgasm a day towards the end of pregnancy, you know, rather than having somebody trying to get a baby out to avoid an induction a week before the induction is going to happen. What can I do? What can I do? Well, you can do nipple stim. You can take some supplements. You can go out walking. You can
you're already to that stressed level.
Yes, you are. So you're combating that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the feeling of pressure. Because again, mind body, just like when you're trying to have an orgasm, oh, but I'm going to be late. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's the same thing. Like, what if I don't have the baby and I have to be induced and then I need an epidural and then it's the same thing. So like, why are we doing that? You know, it's something that I wish that more physicians and midwives could sit down and talk to their clients about or their patients about and like allow them to embrace their sexuality. Like, you know, without one is not the other. Without sex is not...
Sex is life.
Is not pregnancy.
It's life force.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in the sex business because without sex, people aren't going to come to me and hire me.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, this is what it is. And it's super important. And it's one of those things where, you know, I have 3 daughters, and it's important for me to talk to them about these types of things. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I'll never forget my oldest daughter was like, talking about masturbation, and she's like, I need to get to know myself before anybody else gets to know me. And I was like, right on, sister.
High five to her. Holy cow.
You are right on with that. Like, and she's like, so you're okay with that? I was like, I am so okay with that. Like, you know, it's a huge deal.
I think that's another reason why most women, or there's like only supposedly 25% of women actually orgasm, I don't know, supposedly only 25% of women orgasm during sex.
Yes.
But I think that's a reason why is because how is a guy going to be able to know how to bring you to orgasm if you don't even know?
Exactly. Guarantee they know how to get themselves there.
They figured that out a long time ago.
You know, I mean, part of that is just, you know, not again, being comfortable with with who we are and our bodies and not having people around us to kind of sit down and tell us, you know, the importance of it and why it's beneficial to you in your everyday life, you know.
What you're feeling is okay. Like as kids get older and whatever, that
Yes.
it's not bad or wrong or whatever.
Exactly.
That it's okay. It's natural.
Well, and I mean, for me, my daughter's probably, and well, I have 2 sons, 3 daughters. They're all probably a little bit freaked out by the things I talk to them about.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, I didn't have that. I had to figure that out all on my own. And like, you know, I've spoken to my mother even about sex and orgasm, and she's super uncomfortable with like anything involving like direct clitoral stimulation. And I was like, well, Mom, I don't know that you've really ever had an orgasm then, because you've only ever really experienced it through penetration sex, and that really is not happening for most women. So, but she's really uncomfortable with that, you know, and
Yeah.
it's interesting, but when you talk to her about it, you can feel like why she's uncomfortable with it. It's a lot about how she was raised.
Yep.
It's a lot of kind of religious.
Society.
Yes.
Religion.
Yeah, there's
Yep.
so much. And so
The government.
and
I
it's,
mean, sorry,
it's
but
true,
they're getting
but it's crazy for me to think, okay, like I actually felt a little sad because I wanted to be like, but Mom, you should come to this class that we're having about vaginas and you should learn more and maybe you should like have some clitoral stimulation.
Give her a glass
You
of
know?
wine and have her come.
You know,
to class. You know?
But she is not that girl. You know, like that ship has sailed. So,
I don't know. See, I don't know. Well, yeah, I do know. I come from that, too.
Right.
I come from that background. I grew up in Allen, Texas, where my parents had to sign a waiver for us to sit in a gym to listen to sex.
I remember that.
To sex ed.
I came from that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, you know, Baptist church.
Us too.
Don't have sex till you're married. My mom used to say that all the time. I'm like, well, she goes, well, I didn't have sex till I was married. I was like, you were 17.
Yeah.
I'm 17 right now.
Yes.
You know, as I'm talking to her,
Yes.
and I'm like,
Well, and then you put, you know, these stipulations on your kids. And, you know, for me, when I had this talk with my kids about sex, it was not about, like, I remember my daughter, same daughter that talked about masturbation, coming up to me and said, you know, I really don't think I'm going to have sex until I get married. And I was like, you know what? Great if that's what you want to do, but I do not want you to make that promise to me. Like, absolutely don't tell me that, because I'm going to love you no matter what. If you change your mind tomorrow and you want to have sex, good for you. I'm going to support whatever you want to do, because this is your life and your journey. Mm-hmm. But what I do want you to know that the decisions you make are not written in pencil. They're written in permanent pen. And so we can't take them back. So my only request from you is that you will come and talk to me about having sex before you do it, so we can make a plan that will strategically protect you from anything unwanted. And other than that, that's all I'm going to ever ask of you, you know, but I'll just know that I'm going to love you no matter what you do and when you do it. Mm-hmm. So I never had that either. Like, you know, it's just, we just didn't talk about it. My husband comes from a place where it's like, you don't do it. And so one of his sisters was pregnant.
You don't have sex?
You don't have it at all. You don't talk about it. You don't think about it. And you don't have it. Not until you're married. Do you know what happens then? He's one of 4. One of his sisters was pregnant in high school. Mm-hmm. You know, et cetera, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's not something that kind of pressure shouldn't be put on somebody who's trying to figure out who they are and what they want. And so that's a whole nother ball game.
Well, they should, instead of it being told that it's a bad thing or whatever, you should age appropriately, you know,
Agreed.
Empower
Uh-huh.
not only your daughters, but the sons too. And I think it's a part of it is what the guys are being told and what they're taught. Don't cry like a girl. Don't,
Yes.
you know, do this, or, you know, whatever.
Don't play with dolls. Don't wear pink.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that. Like,
don't throw like a girl. You know, all that stuff.
have you ever seen that meme that's like these little boys holding baby dolls, and it's like, don't let your baby play, or don't let your son play with dolls, and then it's like he might grow up to be a dad.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's like such a powerful meme, because I mean, that's the truth. Like, there's absolutely we want them to be like brought up with absolutely no emotion.
Well, right, and that's just gonna kill them. I'm sorry, but like emotions, burying
Empathy.
that stuff down, right?
Yeah, like
No, right. I think all of that kind of causes, imbalance in the body.
Absolutely.
Your physical body, but I can get into all that spiritual.
Exactly.
crap.
And then there's a wife that has to deal with all that drama and trauma from having a husband who isn't able to express himself, open up, share emotion,
Isn't human.
kiss his children,
Right.
all of that.
Right.
It's really a struggle.
Right.
So, yeah, you do. I mean, I think you have a responsibility to raise a son to be an empathetic person that is going to love and be loved, and vice versa, for sure. But, yeah, we could talk about that all day.
I know. Okay, so back to sex.
Yes.
So let's talk about it then. How I know some of the stuff from whenever I was pregnant and quote unquote overdue or whatever. But I carried my kids to like 42 weeks.
Yeah.
And but at that point you're miserable. So
Sure.
And I did
all the
stuff.
Yeah.
And the whole the nipple stimulation, every kind of stimulation.
Sure.
And
so
what else is there?
So nipple stimulation, like you said, of course, releases oxytocin. So that's released kind of in that pulse of the baby suckling, or the stimulation of a baby suckling through a breast pump.
Mm-hmm.
If you're pregnant or in labor, that absolutely works. I mean, it's tried and true and can work if it's time. But, what I think we also have to remember is that your due date's an estimated due date.
Right.
It's not, and everybody cooks their babies to the perfect place. Like, everybody's so different. Like, I think that so many women believe that their baby's going to be born on their due date, and that's just the small percentage of women. Boys take longer to develop than girls, and there's this really cool study that UT Southwestern put out about, like, how do babies know when it's time to be born? And it's because their lungs secrete a substance that tells our body, I'm done cooking, and we go into labor.
Is that what so what I heard my last pregnancy,
Yeah,
I had learned so much more. I don't know if it was because I'd already learned a lot of the basics, and then I was more open.
I think we receive it differently. Yeah,
a little bit more. You're not so much the beginner, you're maybe intermediate at that point.
Because it's fear of the unknown the first time. The second time it's fear of the known. So we want to learn more about the known so we can do it better. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? What was I going to talk about?
You were saying you learned so much more that time, and we were talking about, like, the lungs and...
Oh, yeah. Is it that your baby the baby has to put off a hormone, and then that triggers your body to then put off.
It's kind of like a timer going off in the oven when they're done. So like when those lungs are fully developed, that substance is secreted, and it tells our body, hey, it's time. And it's like a timer going off within you, and it allows for those hormones to start working together and all these ingredients going into the mixing bowl for you to labor.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah.
But the cool thing too is, like, if you were to look at the ingredients in the mixing bowl for labor versus the ingredients in the mixing bowl for orgasm, it's not that far off. And so again, that's part of it. And so we might say nipple stimulation will work because it's going to give you those pulse amounts of oxytocin and allow you to kind of work your way to a place that you're contracting. And you're contracting in a pattern that is going to promote change of the cervix, because we can contract and have nothing, right? So that absolutely can help. And sometimes in the hospital, if somebody comes, stalls out, and the physician or the nurse comes in and says, we're going to start this mom on Pitocin, which is the synthetic of oxytocin, our first thing always is to say, can we first try nipple stimulation with a breast pump? And absolutely, they'll say, yes, you can. Now, the way that works is just like when we pump to give our baby milk, we're never going to pump as much milk as the baby will receive from the breast, because we are in love with our baby. So we have more of the love hormone, which is oxytocin. So we have so much more pumping through us, and that will provide more milk for the baby. However, in the hospital, we're super fearful of using someone who we are in love with who could pretend to be a baby to do our nipple stim, like our partner.
Oh.
Because we are going to still get more oxytocin from them than we are from a pump. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's,
well, yeah.
Again, that's a really cool deal. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Although it sounds really fun sometimes, but then you think I'm going to need some chapstick and I'm going to need, because probably the amount of time you have to do it is not going to be fun for long, but it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about, so that's oxytocin. I heard too, or read somewhere too, that sperm.
So prostaglandin is another
Okay.
super important ingredient in that mixing bowl. And prostaglandin we receive as women on our menstrual cycles every month in anticipation of someday being mothers, right?
Okay.
So what causes our uterus to kind of have that crampy, gross feeling and sometimes, unfortunately, like looser stool on our menstrual cycle is prostaglandin. So it's a softener.
Oh.
It softens and effaces the cervix to allow for dilation, right? So in pregnancy, we need prostaglandin as well, and our body will give us some. We'll notice it, when we're feeling crampy, when we are anticipating labor, when labor is imminent and we start having looser stool, the prostaglandin has arrived.
Okay.
It's there.
Okay.
But we can also receive that from our partner through semen. So
Okay.
semen has quite a bit of prostaglandin in it. So when your physician or midwife is like, go home and have some sex, what I wish they'd say is go home and have sex because...
Yes.
If a woman has an orgasm, she will excrete oxytocin, which will help her with contractions. And if you will have an orgasm,
inside her,
yes, you will ejaculate within her, then you will give her prostaglandin that will help soften and efface her cervix so that when she starts contracting from that oxytocin, those ingredients will work together. So that's a much different thing than just go home and have sex.
Right.
Because that mom's going to be like, I don't really feel like that. Or
he might be like, I really don't want to feel.
Yes.
I don't want to.
Yes. Or she might just be like, I'm hot and pregnant. I just don't want to do
Don't
it.
touch
Like,
me.
yes.
Right.
But there's such benefit to it. So, you're right. So you have oxytocin that's coming from nipple stimulation or clitoral orgasm. And then you have prostaglandin that's coming from semen. So there are studies that show the benefits to ingesting semen versus having it local on the cervix. But I don't say that as often as maybe I could or should because I don't want all the women to hate me.
Yeah.
So, that's where it's at.
Well, if you really want people, if you're really desperate.
Calls for desperate measures.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
You can always swallow.
Yeah,
Supposedly,
no, it's true.
if it goes in through your stomach,
That's exactly right.
It's digested.
It's exactly
or
right.
you get 5 times more
That's right.
prostaglandin or something.
That's exactly right. And that's what the studies show. And it does sound like something maybe we wouldn't want to do. But in the scheme of things, when you weigh out like potentially going to the hospital and having synthetics, because just like they have synthetic oxytocin, they have synthetic prostaglandin.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how your body's going to necessarily react to that. And, when you think about it, like this other person, your partner, potentially is the one who kind of helped you have this baby in the first place. So it just kind of makes sense,
right.
For both of you to kind of use the tools that you have within you to get this baby out, right? I mean, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Whenever I read that, I was just convinced a guy wrote that just because, whatever about the
no, I
ingesting.
was too. I had to go back and read
God.
it. Yes, I had to go back and read it. And I was like, it's okay, but there's some legitimacy to it. So
yeah.
I'm gonna.
I mean, it makes sense. So.
It does, and I mean, unfortunately, but. Yeah.
Or you know what? Why unfortunately? The only unfortunate thing I could see, like I was saying earlier, was when you're early on in your pregnancy and you have the gag reflex and it just doesn't taste.
That's probably
good
the
or
only
whatever.
thing. Yes.
But then it's that when you're.
I think really, truly, when you're at the end of the race and like, you kind of, like you were saying, you're just ready to have your baby and like the end is in sight and you're thinking of all the things that you could do to potentially help yourself that is within like the natural normal scheme of things. You're right.
Natural
Like
and loving.
absolutely.
And nurturing.
And it is.
It's
part of the process. And I just have to say, like, you know, we say this a lot when we're teaching. It's just such a perfect design. It's an amazing design. Like the way that our bodies can do this and work together and get our babies out with little to no intervention or interference. It's a really amazing thing. So it goes back to that. And if that's what we need to do, be all in. Mm-hmm. I mean, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't be that bad. So.
Oh, I mean, just try it. Well,
yeah.
It's going to hurt.
It's
not
better
than going to a hospital.
Exactly right. Like yes, exactly right. So it's perfect. So, but yeah, those are definitely some of the things that we encourage. And I mean, these are things that could potentially help people efface and dilate sooner than later. So, you know, effacement is the key ingredient to allowing for dilation, and that's where we get that from prostaglandin.
Okay.
So, you know, because you can't have dilation without effacement. And I think people just forget about that in pregnancy. Mm-hmm. That's the thinning and shortening of the cervix. Mm-hmm. So if it's super thick, then it can't stretch and open or dilate. So that's why we need it.
Is that kind of the same thing what evening primrose oil
Yeah, so
does?
Evening primrose oil oftentimes is encouraged because it is kind of a natural supplement that helps soften and efface the cervix. And again, you know, providers will say, some of them will say insert it vaginally, mm-hmm. like, you know, a vaginal suppository and go to sleep, where others really believe that you should ingest it. I'm on that side. I believe that you should take it by mouth for the same reason that we just talked about with natural prostaglandin and semen, because you're going to receive more of its benefits, okay. Right? But people say both things. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times we hear and support in using evening primrose oil for that very reason. Did you do that?
I did at the end with both of them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You just cook your babies long.
I do.
Which is good.
And they're big. And
which
they
is
just
good
like
and
to
fine.
Be in there.
Yeah. They don't want to be evicted.
No,
they know where it's comfy.
I know, it's warm.
Yeah. It's comfy in there.
They got fed well.
That probably means you had stress-free pregnancies. Yeah?
No, the first one was stress-free. The second one, no.
More stressful.
Not at all.
And you still cooked that baby long.
Yeah. Well, once I started having, like, early on, kind of, like, they weren't really contractions, but I would feel everything, like, tighten up. Mm-hmm. And it was when I was at work, and when I got stressed, and it freaked me out. So I had a whole readjustment of my mind. I'm like, I can't
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a believer that, like, babies know and bodies know when to protect or release their babies. And, like, if you, if your body feels like your baby is safer on the outside versus the inside, then that's what will happen. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, if we're at the end of our pregnancy and we're just really struggling with, like, all those pressures that we were talking about earlier, and you allow that to happen to you, a lot of times your body can say, ooh, do I want to let the baby go out there? Like, it's kind of stressful. Does that make sense? Like, maybe I'll just hold this baby tight for a little bit longer until things calm down. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had, like, a trial attorney be like, I just got to get through this trial. And that the day after it, like, the baby comes.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It's like bodies know. But that's, again, mind-body connection.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
Well, I had a little bit of a thought. I don't know if you know anything about this, but whenever you're talking about sperm, prostaglandin, or whatever, and how it helps with contractions, what would it help during? We can talk about, you know, having sex during your menstrual cycle.
Yeah,
would that help
absolutely
too?
Beneficial. Okay. Well, I mean, it's definitely beneficial because it's supposed to allow for the oxytocin release, for your uterus to contract. It kind of a lot of people say, and if you kind of read studies about this, that you will bleed for a lesser amount of time because your body yes, kind of. And you know how, like, your mom and your coach used to say, like, if you're more active, your cramps would be less. Oh, yeah. Same thing. So you're receiving more endorphins when you orgasm as well. That's another ingredient in the mixing bowl. Endorphins are natural narcotics, so it's kind of a way to relieve cramping and menstrual pain. So absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, there's lots of benefits to
Sex.
Yes,
And healing.
Yeah. And there's you get an increased release of DHEA, which is a hormone that's released from the adrenal glands, and that helps with your immune system, and it helps maintain and replenish tissue. Okay. So you're getting that from orgasm as well.
Wow.
So it's insane. Like amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad how, I mean, the power, the healing power, the connecting, the bonding, just the positive power of sex has been squashed for so long by the negative effects of all the suppression, whenever
Absolutely.
you suppress, and then so it's over, all this, sex has been overshadowed with the negative.
Absolutely.
And destruction and harm and whatever.
Absolutely.
And so hopefully, I think bringing I feel there's a shift going on where women are becoming more empowered, becoming more into their own, and so then that brings the nurturing, loving, healing back to sex.
Absolutely.
And it's very, very powerful if we allow it. If we know how to use it and learn how to use it and
Absolutely.
allow it.
And I mean that, that goes to where, then you are able to connect better with your partner and, have and receive like a better sexual relationship. As you're growing through and developing through your relationships.
And then that creates a better family unit. And
absolutely. I mean, because you're so bonded. I mean, the release of oxytocin is creating this amazing, like, bonding cocktail between the two of you. Do you know what I mean? So it just kind of goes without saying, but I think we... it's that next generation that's coming up, just like I was talking about my daughter, and it depends on like the way that we speak to it and the way that we allow for sex to be perceived from women to women. I believe that's where it begins. So whether it's talking about pregnancy or teenagers or whatever, like we just have to feel more comfortable and talk about it and learn from each other and kind of be open. Otherwise we're not going to have what we want to have, you know. And that's why it makes me so happy that like my daughter like is so comfortable talking about it. You know, we talked about at dinner the other night, my youngest daughter, who's 14, was talking about her menstrual cycle, and my dad, who's her grandfather, was like, oh my gosh, we're talking about this. I was like, yeah, like we're totally talking about this right now. Like everyone sits at the dinner table at night. And, I was just talking to her about, how it works and like the importance of it and, what's going on with her body, etc. And then I started talking to her about this lady that I went to a conference and she spoke at the conference, talked about that she had a menstrual celebration for her daughter, and every month when she was on her period, she hung a flag outside the door, just like she hangs like an Easter flag or and my daughter was like, okay, yeah, that's going too far. And we were just laughing about it. But, it's amazing, like that it is becoming more talked about, and like that she feels so comfortable talking about it, and it's just a normal process of her body, and she's not weirded out about it. She's like super empowered by it. It's really cool.
And that, I mean, I'm 40 and I'm just now learning to accept, and I have a better perception of what my period is. I mean,
me too.
40, and it took me this long to be like, oh, I'm cleansing. It's a natural cycle with the earth and the moons and oh, that's what this is, and this is good. Versus, oh my God, I'm on the rag.
And that's so sad. And that is all perception again. And that's why I feel like little girls are so frightened about like starting their periods, going to that scary class that we had to go to. you're not learning anything beneficial within that. Like, you're just learning something scary and negative, and why do I have to go through this, and I'm not going to be able to wear white pants, and like all
Which
that.
is why.
Do you know what I
really
mean?
want to wear white pants
Yes,
anyway? Probably not a good idea.
Who wears white pants? No, but you know what I mean? Like, it's all about that versus like, oh my gosh, someday if you choose, you can be a mother, and like, these are all the things that will be happening, and it's like super cool. Congratulations, like, you're in the club.
Yeah.
It's really sad. And then it goes to pregnancy. We are so fear driven with that because we've heard all of the same things that we heard about our period. Like, it's just so horrible. Oh my gosh, your cousin tore from front to back, and like, she was in labor for 36 hours, and da da da. And those are shameful things to say, like, because you're instilling fear in the next generation. And when my daughters talked to me about birth, they were like, did it hurt? And I was like, I didn't really perceive it as pain. It seemed productive, and it definitely was something that was uncomfortable, but like, so is like running a marathon.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
It's perception.
Yeah, well, right, and I think that was my issue with my first one, was I'm such a goal-oriented person. Finish line, I was an athlete, all of that.
Yeah.
And so I was just in it, and I'm like, oh my God, it's never going to end.
Yes.
And that's all I was focused on.
It's like running a race, you can't see the end. Where's the end? Yes.
Yeah, and I wasn't ever focused on baby coming out.
Yes.
I was focused on the pain.
Yeah.
And, and what it was right at that moment versus
Absolutely.
focusing on. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the things that we have to change our verbiage and the way that we speak about things that are going on for women, and all of that just ties in together. Like, it's just so, there has to be, we have to, like, I feel like we have such a huge responsibility of putting an end to that kind of crap.
Right, and it starts with us.
Absolutely.
It starts
does.
with us.
Yeah.
Because, I remember my doctor, who's a holistic practitioner, I said something about, he said, well, you need to start taking care of yourself, and self-love, self-care, and whatever. And I go, yeah, that's what I'm trying to teach my daughters. And he just kind of condescendingly, sweetly, but condescendingly looked at me and said, oh, honey, you can't teach them that. You have to be that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, crap. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And then I had to change my whole
It really makes you think about it, right?
But then it benefits everybody
as
well.
Yeah.
Everybody around you, your kids.
I just feel like I'm just barely at a place where I'm like super comfortable in my own skin, and I'm not like, over analyzing or dissecting every single thing about myself, and the way that impacts your daughters, I mean, is insane.
Yeah.
So, and it goes,
that's awesome.
It's all about that. That's why we have, issues with sex, because we're fearful of, how we're going to be perceived, what we're going to look like what it's going to, all of that. And then that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not about connection, and it's not about,
allowing
surrender
yourself to be in your power.
Absolutely. So it's interesting. So anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome.
Well, good.